Hi everyone, my name is Steph. This is the Novelty Corner, and welcome back to my channel, and welcome to even more Aussie book recommendations. So, as one of the co-hosts for the where are we? Over here. No, over here. Australian Readathon. I cannot work out my left and right when I'm on screen. As one of the co-hosts for the Australian Readathon, every year I have been filming one of these videos where I talk about the most recent books by Australian authors that I have read since the last Readathon. And then I also attach which prompts they would fulfill for the current year's readathon. I currently have 2 of these videos on my channel. I think we'd be getting close to 200 book recommendations in different categories, from middle grade to young adult to adult titles in various genres. Yeah, we're going to jump into some more Australian book recommendations from the last 12 months. Alrighty. Now, we know I'm not fancy and I'm only doing this on one computer, so trying to run this as a slideshow wasn't working for me. So on the screen, you can see the host's favorites. You have Ren's favorites over here, my favorites, Meredith's favorites, and Mel's favorites. Being favorites, they all come highly recommended. I have talked about Huda and Me in a previous one of these videos. I've talked about Red Dirt Heart in a previous video. I don't think I've talked about Spirit of the Crocodile yet. I've also think I've talked about The Book Thief and Terra Nullius, so they're all ones that I have read. Just as a reminder for everyone, these are the prompts for the bingo board. There is an intersectional read, a different format, randomly selected, an island setting, free space, published in 2024 or 2025, under 400 pages, trees on the cover, or a host favourite. Now, obviously, for this readathon, you can choose to participate however you like. You can just choose to read one book. You could choose to read the group book, which would give you a bingo here, and I think also a bingo here. So you can just read one book, and our group book is Unleashed by Melanie Sayward, and I'm very much looking forward to picking that up. Otherwise, yeah, these are the prompts. There are some that are similar to previous years and some that are a little bit different, and we are going to start with some middle fiction and really kicking off with some middle fiction graphic novels. So this could possibly count for a different format if you don't read middle fiction or if you also don't read graphic novels. So there is Line Dancers by Kai Sai, which is about 2 rival line dancers who are competing for the position of head in their line dance troupe, and they have previously been friends and they are having to rekindle their friendship. It was published in 2024 and it's under 400 pages long. There is Chickenpox by Remy Lai, which was published this year. Anyway, it was published in 2024 or 2025. It's under 400 pages long, and it is about the Lai family as children when they all get chickenpox and are quarantined at home, and the hilarity that ensues when you are stuck with your siblings. There is Ando's Kung Fu Roo series, which is his most recent release. So there's only 2 books out, Enter the Roo and Crouching Kanga Hidden Hippo, which has only just come out in the last couple of months. Both of these were published in 2024 or 2025. They're under 400 pages long, and they follow a group of friends who somehow manage to acquire the ability to change into animal forms, and they become a little bit of a hero group who are trying to protect their town from the Crocker Gang, who also have the ability to transform into animals and are the villains of the piece. Then we have some novels. There is Moon Boy, which is a 24-25 release. It's under 400 pages long. It is set in Australia, so it counts for an island setting. This is a time slip novel about a young girl who is staying with her grandmother over holiday break. Her grandfather has dementia and lives in a care facility, and she doesn't like going to visit him, but she ends up accidentally traveling back in time to his past, and she meets him as a young boy during the moon landing and finds a way to connect with him in the present. There are 6 Summers of Tash and Leopold by Danielle Binks, which is a really gorgeous book. Again, 2024-2025 for release, under 400 pages long, set in Australia, so an island setting. And this one is about friendship. It is about transitioning from primary school to secondary school and the struggles that sometimes comes with that. There is Read at Your Own Risk by Remy Lai. This is I would count this as a different format. This is kind of like a diary entry, and the diary is threatening the main character. It's for those kids who really like a spooky, creepy kind of vibe story. It was published in 24-25. It's under 400 pages long, and it's definitely not for the faint of heart. Also published this year is Lisa Fuller's Washpool. This is under 400 pages long. It's set in Australia. Lisa Fuller is an Indigenous author. This was a really fun Indigenous middle grade fantasy story where 2 sisters end up traveling to a parallel world and end up having to help the inhabitants there to resolve some issues between different groups within the community. There is Spirit of the Crocodile, which was published in 24-25. It's under 400 pages long. This is a really gorgeous book because it is not only an Indigenous title, but it's set in the Torres Strait Islands, which I haven't read all that many novels for middle fiction readers set in the Torres Strait Islands, and this was great for that. There are trees on the cover. It's a host favorite because I put it on there, and it was really wonderful. It is, again, a bit of a coming of age, moving from primary school to high school. And in this case, our main character has to literally move to a different island away from his family to attend high school because they don't have a high school on their small island. The timing of this is a little bit tricky because there is a huge storm that is bigger than anyone expected, and it causes havoc for the island with flooding and big storms. And alongside all of this, you have the spirit of the crocodile, which is the totem of our main character's family. There is Bindi by Curly Saunders. Again, if you don't read middle fiction, I would count it as a different format, but it's under 400 pages long. It's an island setting. It is intersectional. Curly Saunders is Indigenous and queer. I can't believe how long I slept on this book because it was utterly delightful. There is The Unstoppable Flying Flanagan by Felice Arena, which is a middle fiction historical story. It's under 400 pages long. It's set in Australia, and it is, I can't remember what year it's set in, but it is about a young girl in Australia who I think it's around might have been World War II, and she loves playing AFL footy, and girls at this time are not allowed to play it, but her brother and a lot of people from the town have gone off to war, and to raise funds to send things to their family members overseas, she organises a all-female football game, and it's very controversial. Brave Paw is more junior fiction, and so is Ella, the Ella series, but I wanted to include them because these are really fantastic. Brave Paw is a really great intro to fantasy books for younger readers. So the first book is Brave Paw and the Heartstone of Illyria, and the second one is Brave Paw and the Clawstone of Rotwood Mire. Both of these were published in 24-25. They're under 400 pages long. There are trees on the cover, and they are great adventure stories. And my 7 and 8 year old students really loved this series. We read the first one and they're really upset with me because I said we couldn't read the second one because we had other books to read this year, but they've all read my copy of the second book. Then there is the Ella series. This is by Cassie Polomeni, with illustrations by Heike Breeze. There is Ella and the Amazing Frog Orchestra and Ella and the Amazing Sleepover. I'm currently reading the first book with the class at the minute because it fits in with our sustainability unit. This is about Ella who moves house. She's unhappy about this because she's moved away from her best friend and her school, and she has to start over. And what she discovers in her backyard is that there is a frog pond neighbor on the border of her and her neighbor's property. When the neighbors decide to pull down the fence, that frog pond is disturbed and the frogs start disappearing, and she wants to bring them back. So it's very much about conservation, and there's some really cool information at the back. And Ella and the Amazing Sleepover Safari is Ella trying to bring her two best friends, her best friend from her old school and her new best friend, together because she thinks that they would all get along really well, and it doesn't go as smoothly as she initially plans. And then the last one that I'm including in here is Stuff I'm Not Sorry For. This is a poetry collection, so a different format, by Maxine Beneba Clark. It was published this year. It's under 400 pages long, and it contains 99 poems for young people, and they're all different forms of poetry, from blackout poetry to sonnets, anything that you can think of. And for anyone who is not sure about poetry forms, there is a really handy glossary at the back of the book that tells you exactly what each poem is. I really love Maxine Beneba Clark's poetry collections like this. I think they're really great for kids. Then we have some young adult. There is Isabel Carmody's Comes the Night, which is her most recent release. It was published in 24. It is set in Canberra, so it's set in Australia, so island setting counts for this. And it's a really cool kind of world where all the cities are basically domed because humans have wrecked the environment. And it's about a main character who discovers that he has the ability to travel through dreams. There is Blood Moon Bride by Demet Divarowan, which I've talked about a couple of times already this year. It's a recent release. It's under 400 pages long, and it is very much a fight the patriarchy, feminism story, set in a fantasy world with our main character who is forced to become a Blood Moon Bride, and when she doesn't conform is sent to be trained to be the perfect bride, and still she doesn't conform, and while she's there, she learns a little bit more about a natural magic that she has. I'm Not Really Here by Gary Lonsborough is a book that came out last year. It's under 400 pages long. It's intersectional, Indigenous and queer, and is really delightful. We've talked about Gary Lonsborough a lot through the Australian Readathon because his writing is just fantastic. We read The Boy from the Mish back for the first Readathon's group book pick. He's just a really solid writer, and I can't recommend his young adult books enough. Then there is Ladies' Night by Amy Kaufman and Megan Spooner. This one is a recent release, just published in the last couple of months. We have two girls. This is a sapphic romance set in kind of a medieval / magical world. There are maybe mentions of some dragons in here for those people who like dragons, but one of the girls dreams of entering into a jousting tournament. So she has crafted her own armor. She's the daughter of a blacksmith and a blacksmith in her own right, and enters into a tournament. And Lady Isabel figures out pretty quickly that this mysterious knight that nobody knows is actually a woman, and she helps her concoct a plan in order to allow her to compete, because whoever wins this tournament will win the hand of Lady Isabel in marriage. It was a really fun read. Then there's Unhallowed Halls by Lily Wilkinson, which is a 2024 release. It is set on an island. It's not Australia. Lily Wilkinson is Australian though. And this is kind of a dark academia YA story, maybe or maybe not, with demons. There is This Dream Will Devour Us by Emma Clancy, which is I always struggle to describe this one. There is magic. The world is very similar to ours. So it's kind of a fantasy-ish kind of story about a girl who would love to have magic. And in this world, magic is gifted to people literally via magic pills that allow you to unlock your magic potential. And she finds herself caught up in sort of the high society world with the family who have designed these magic pills. And it's all very twisty and turny and political. It's a recent release and it is under 400 pages long. All right, moving into some adult titles. There is Bright Objects by Ruby Todd. This is set in Australia and it is all based around a once-in-a-lifetime comet event that people are observing and the way that different people react. So you have your cult groups, you have your people who are just generally interested, and how everything intersects. We have a couple of Anita Heiss books. The first one, I always manage to mispronounce the traditional name of the book. The English translation is River of Dreams, and it is under 400 pages long. It's set in Australia. There are trees on the cover, and it is a historical story. It is really, really great. And I do have a second historical book on my list to try and get to in the next month if the audiobook comes in on time. There is Red Dust Running, also by Anita Heiss. This is more of a women's fiction story. I think it's been marketed as romance, but it reads more women's fiction. There is a romance or a relationship that the main character enters into at the start of the book, and then a different one at the end of the book. I've talked a little bit about why I don't feel like it fully sits under the romance label in the video where I read it. It was originally published, I think, as an Audible original and has been released or picked up as a traditionally published book recently. It's under 400 pages long. It's an island setting, and it's an interesting one because it looks at rodeo in Australia, because our main character is a young Indigenous woman who is very successful in her career. She has really strong beliefs, and how these beliefs might be challenged or reinforced when she's confronted with people that she maybe wouldn't necessarily have considered herself being in a relationship with previously. And then there is Unlimited Futures, speculative, visionary, black and black fiction. This is a really great collection. It's under 400 pages long. It's a different format because it's an anthology of different stories, and I didn't put on here, but it probably would fall under intersectional as well, because you have lots of different identities that fall within it, and it's a really cool collection of stories that I read earlier in the year. Then we have romance books. So we have my Saxon James and my Eden Finley page, and I can't remember if there's more of them past this page. I did put free space here because there's no specific genre categories, so you could use genre as a category if you wanted to. So if you wanted to do romance, you could do that. Same thing with any of the other books, to be honest. Pretty much all of these are under 400 pages long. They're pretty quick reads. There is the Divorced Men's Club series by Saxon James, which is a really fun, easy to read queer series. You have Eden Finley's The Famous series, which are rockstar romances and were really interesting to go back and read. There is The Backup Plan by Eden Finley, which is a 24-25 release. It's under 400 pages long. And this is a spin-off of her, what's the series called? Her original sports romance series, following the agents and clients of one of the main characters from that original series. They are sports agents. So the series is the King Sports series. And yeah, we feature a lot of characters from the Satan-verse, which always makes it fun. Then we have my Evie Mitchell page. So there's Darn It At All, which is the most recent release in the All Access novel series that came out last year. It's under 400 pages long. It is gorgeous. It features, actually this would probably count for intersectional. One of our characters has a prosthetic leg. The other character is demisexual. It is a really delightful time as these two characters compete on a reality dressmaking or clothing making show, and only one of them can actually sew. There is Kink in the Road by Evie Mitchell, which was a 2024 release. It's under 400 pages long. It is a polyamorous relationship between three people who live on they live on an island. I could have put island setting on here as well. This is what happens when you try and record recommendations 12 months after you read something. There is Royal Salute, which is the most recent book that I've read by Evie Mitchell, which was published this year. It is under 400 pages long. It's one of my host favorites. It is a queer romance between one of the spare heirs to the throne of the world that Evie has created and a soldier or guard from one of the local native tribes who have been friends for ages. They've actually worked together in the past. There's been an attraction between the two of them, but with everything that's gone on since the royal's sister has taken the throne, there hasn't been time for anything. But the thing that I love about this book is that there are some really fantastic conversations in here about native land rights in a really positive way that both our main characters are fighting for, and they work together to resolve that, as well as their relationship, which I adored. Then we have some Becca Seymour books. There's High Alert, which is a queer romance. It's under 400 pages long. It's set in Australia. There's trees on the cover, and Under the Blazing Stars. Again, under 400 pages, an island setting, trees on the cover. Just fun, quick, easy reads. Then we have a sapphic romance in Novel Problems by Elizabeth Lilly. This was published in 2024. It's under 400 pages long. There are trees on the cover, and it is a delightful small town romance set during the summertime. And she has recently just released a third book in the same series, and I desperately want to read that. Then we have N.R. Walker, There's Nothing Left to Lose, which was a 24 release. This was actually included in an anthology for a book signing event. So it's a short story set in Las Vegas. It was really fun. So it's definitely under 400 pages long. There is To the Moon and Back, again, a queer romance under 400 pages long, featuring a single dad and a baby. And it was utterly adorable. There is The Bait, which is part of the Milvis Files series by N.R. Walker. It was published last year. It's under 400 pages long. It is partially set in Australia, so it can count for island setting. It has trees on the cover and it ties in with Tallowood, and I utterly adore this one. It's more romantic suspense, but really, really compelling. A few more N.R. Walker books. There is the Storm Boys series, which is a collection of 1 novella and 3 novels. I adored this collection. They are set in the Northern Territory. So it's an island setting. It's set in Australia. They're all under 400 pages long. And the novels in the series focus on two men who are fascinated by storms. One's a meteorologist. One likes to just chase storms for fun. And it's their relationship. Then we have Davo by N.R. Walker, which is a short story. So it's well under 400 pages long. This one's set in close to the Kimberley region, or it's definitely in northern Western Australia. So it's an island setting. And it's about a man who is sent to a FIFO mining town to document how that town is functioning and working, being so isolated. And there he meets one of the local men and they fall for one another. And there are some really beautiful scenes in this book. There is That Island Feeling by Karina May. That was a 2024, or might have been 2025 release. And it's under 400 pages long. It's a traditionally published romance set in Australia. And it's an unlikely relationship that develops while a woman is on holiday with friends. There is The Matchmaker by Saman Shard, which was a 24-25 release. It's under 400 pages long. It's set in Australia, and it is about a Desi matchmaker who loves to find good matches for her clients, and she's not necessarily focused on necessarily matching the same social class of people. She wants people to find true love matches, which makes her a bit of an outlier in the matchmaking community there. And she is tasked with finding a match for our main male character, who she's accidentally met previously. He doesn't know that his parents have asked her to find him a match. So they have some very interesting conversations, and the relationship that develops between them is very up and down. Then we have 2 rural romances, one from Carly Lane. There's Twist of Fate. It's a 24-25 release, under 400 pages long. Set in Australia, trees on the cover. Just a really easy contemporary romance read, mostly closed door for those people who want a closed door romance. There is The Library at Wagtail Ridge by Janet Gover, which is under 400 pages long. Again, set in Australia. There's trees on the cover. It's about a woman who ends up inheriting a traveling library. And initially she's planning on disbanding it, but then she discovers how important it is to the local community, as well as discovering sort of some of the stories about her mother, who she wasn't really close to. Then we have Beck McMaster. There's the Burnland series, which is a paranormal romance series that is also dystopian. I think all of these books are under 400 pages long. They're really fun. There is the Something Wicked series by Elise Hay, again, a paranormal romance series. This one is set in Melbourne. I think they're mostly 24-25 releases. They're under 400 pages long. They're set in Australia, and they follow a magical social worker who is a witch and is trying to help the local magical community. I will content warning, though, in this one, things do get quite heavy, and particularly in book book 3, you need to read the content warnings for it, or I've got videos where I've talked about the books. So I'm happy to go into more detail if anyone has questions about those. There is the Demons in Law series by Louisa Masters, which is a queer MM spin-off series of some of Louisa Masters' other series. She has a very large extended world and all of the characters are interconnected and it's really fun. They've been published over the last couple of years. Number 3 was published in 24-25. They're all under 400 pages long. They're super short and easy to read. And this series is set in a remote demon community that is high up in the hills where it's snowy. I had such a fun time reading these. They're just really fun, low angst kind of stories. And sometimes that's all I want. I also read Her Vicious Beasts by E.P. Barley. This is sort of a prequel novella to her series that is a Why Choose paranormal monster romance series. I haven't continued it, but my friends really enjoy this series and I get regular updates from them on how it's going. This is under 400 pages long. And then there is An Academic Affair by Jodie McAllister, which is a contemporary romance that has just been published this year. It is under 400 pages long. It's set in Australia, and more specifically, it's set in Tasmania, which is an island state just south of Victoria. And honestly, I had so much fun with this. It's 2 academic rivals who've known each other since they started college, and they've consistently been competing for the same academic jobs. And they end up in a fake marriage in order to secure both of them a job teaching in academia and the challenges that come along with that. It was utterly delightful. I love Jodie's contemporary romances. They're really fun. Then some things that are not necessarily fiction. So there is Kindred by Curly Saunders. This is an intersectional First Nations queer author poetry collection. It's an island setting. I'm counting that as a tree on the cover. The flower is part of a tree. So it's a really great collection, and Curly Saunders is an awesome poet. There is Growing Up Asian in Australia, edited by Alice Pung. This is an intersectional text. Depending on the stories that you read, there's actually lots of little short stories from different people, not all traditional authors. Some of them are just general people who have submitted stories about growing up Asian in Australia. I've included a different format because it's an anthology and it's all set in Australia. There is Kinky History by Esme Louise James, which is the stories of our intimate lives, past and present. Esme Louise James has the Kinky History podcast, and that's a big part of her research. And it was a 24 release. This, I think, is under 400 pages long. I think the best way to read this book might be via audio because she is very expressive in the way that she speaks and talks about the topics that she explores, which is essentially the history of sex and how its perception has grown or changed over time, and the things that people may not expect from history. I've included a couple of picture books in here because I think they really fit sort of some of these themes. There is Come Together Again by Isaiah Firebrace. This is a collection of information about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander music, song, and dance traditions. So it's a different format. It's a picture book. It's set in Australia and the Torres Strait Islands. It's under 400 pages long. It was published last year. Really gorgeous book. And he does have another book called Come Together, which is the first one that he released. There is Always Was, Always Will Be by Auntie Faye Muir and Sue Lawson, which is a history of First Nations activism in Australia. It's under 400 pages long. It's set here. It's a different format, being a picture book, but it's a non-fiction. Again, it's a non-fiction picture book, and it was published in 24, I believe. There is Always Was, Always Will Be, the same title, but this time by Thomas Mayo. This is a non-fiction book, and this looks at the journey and the failure, but also the path forward for the referendum to have a voice to Parliament for our First Nations people. It's under 400 pages long. It's a non-fiction book. It is a recent release. It's one of those books where you read it and you might... there's a lot of really great information about the history of activism for First Nations people in the country. Thomas Mayo does talk about, how and why the campaign may have failed, but also the positive things that we can do moving forward in order to keep putting pressure on the government and people around us to help educate people to understand why a voice to Parliament is so important. It's a really, really great book. It was one of my favorite reads at the start of the year and probably one of my favorite nonfiction reads so far this year. There is My Place by Sally Morgan, which is a autobiography. I read the younger readers version, which is well over 400 pages long, so it's quite dense, but it is a really interesting story of Sally Morgan's life and how she began to connect with her culture, because originally she didn't know that she was Indigenous, and she goes on a journey to find out about her people and her family connections. And it's a really fascinating story. It fits an island setting and trees on the cover. There is Bite Back by Hannah Ferguson, which is under 400 pages long. It's based in Australia, Hannah Ferguson has a social media company, and this is her talking about feminism, media, politics, and power. And then the last one I'm going to talk about is Main Character Energy by Bianca Hunt, which is a kind of probably fits under the self-help category. I found it more interesting from the perspective of learning more about Bianca Hunt and her experiences as a young Indigenous woman in the media. But it does talk about, her story and how she's found to manage her life and always how to center what she's tried to achieve in her life. It's under 400 pages long. It's based in Australia. It's a recent release, and I did listen to the audiobook for it. So those are some more recommendations. Hopefully in there are some new books to you, or books that sound interesting to you. In the comments, I'd love to know if you are planning on picking up anything for the Australian Readathon, or if you have other recommendations, feel free to leave them down below. I will leave the other videos from previous years' recommendations also in the description, so you can go check them out if you would like to. If you just want to let me know that you're here but you don't want to leave a comment, feel free to leave any kind of Australian emoji. Otherwise, I hope that wherever you're in the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, everyone.